Once upon a time, there was a king who had a great forest near his castle full of all kinds of wild animals. One day he sent out a huntsman to shoot a deer, but the huntsman did not come back again. Perhaps he had an accident, said the king, and the following day he sent out 2 other huntsmen to search for him, but they did not return either. Then on the 3rd day, he summoned all his huntsmen and said, "Search through the whole forest and do not give up until you have found all 3. But none of these came home again either. From that time on, no one dared to go into the forest, and it lay there in deep solitude. This lasted for many years. When an unknown huntsman presented himself to the king and offered to go into the dangerous forest, the king did not want to give his permission and said, "I am afraid that you will never come out again." The huntsman answered, "Sir, I will proceed at my own risk. Of fear I know nothing." The huntsman therefore set forth with his dog into the forest. It was not long before the dog picked up a scent and wanted to follow it. But the dog had run only a few steps when it came to a deep pool and could go no further. Then a naked arm reached out of the water, seized the dog, and pulled it under. When the huntsman saw that, he went back and got 3 men. They returned with buckets and bailed out the water. When they could see the bottom, there was a wild man lying there. His body was brown like rusty iron, and his hair hung over his face down to his knees. They bound him with cords and led him away to the castle. Everyone was greatly astonished at the wild man. The king had him put into an iron cage in his courtyard, forbidding, on pain of death, that the cage door be opened. The queen herself was to safeguard the key, and from this time forth, everyone could again go safely into the forest. The king had a son of 8 years. One day he was playing in the courtyard, and during his game, his golden ball fell into the cage. The boy ran to the cage and said,
"Give me my ball back. Give me my ball back."
"Not until you have opened the door for me,"
answered the man. The boy said,
"I can't. The king has forbidden it."
And he ran away. The next day he came again and demanded his ball. The wild man said,
"Open my door."
But the boy would not do so. On the 3rd day the king had ridden out hunting, and the boy went once more and said,
"Give me my ball." "No, even if I wanted to, I cannot. I don't have the key."
Then the wild man said,
"It is under your mother's pillow."
The boy, who wanted to have his ball back, threw all caution to the wind and got the key. The door opened with difficulty, and the boy pinched his finger. When it was open, the wild man stepped out, gave him the golden ball, and hurried away. The boy became afraid and called after him,
"Oh, wild man, do not go, or I shall get a beating, or I shall get a beating."
The wild man turned around, picked him up, set him on his shoulders, and went with hasty steps away into the forest. When the king came home and noticed the empty cage, the queen looked for the key, but it was gone. She called the boy, but no one answered. The king sent out people to look for him in the field, but they did not find him. Then he could easily guess what had happened, and great sorrow ruled at the royal court. After the wild man had once more reached the dark forest, he set the boy down from his shoulders and said to him,
You will never again see your father and mother, but I will keep you with me, for you have set me free and I have compassion on you. If you do all I bid you, you will fare well. Of treasures and gold I have enough, and more than anything in the world.
He made a bed of moss for the boy upon which he fell asleep. The next morning, the boy took him to a well.
No, the boy didn't take him to a well.
The man took the boy to a well and said,
Look, this golden well is as clear as crystal. You shall sit beside it and take care that nothing falls into it. Otherwise it will be polluted. I shall come every evening to see if you have obeyed my order.
The boy sat down at the edge of the well and took care that nothing fell into it. As he was thus sitting there, his finger hurt him so fiercely that he put it into the water. He quickly pulled it out again, but saw that it was completely covered with gold. However hard he tried to wipe the gold off again, it was to no avail. That evening, Iron Hans came back, looked at the boy, and said,
What has happened to the well?
He answered,
Nothing.
holding his finger behind his back so the man would not be able to see it. But the man said,
You have dipped your finger into the water. This time it may pass, but take care. You do not again let anything fall in.
By daybreak, the boy was sitting by the well and keeping watch. His finger hurt him again and he passed it over his head. Then a hair fell into the well. He quickly pulled it out, but it was already completely covered with gold. Iron Hans came and already knew what had happened.
You have let a hair fall into the well.
He said,
I will allow you to watch by it once more, but if it happens a third time, then the well will be polluted and you can no longer stay with me.
On the third day, the boy sat by the well and did not move his finger, however much it hurt him. But time passed slowly for him, and he looked at the reflection of his face in the water. As he bent down more and more, his long hair fell from his shoulders down into the water. He quickly straightened himself up, but all the hair on his head was already covered with gold and shone like the sun. He took his handkerchief and tied it round his head. When the man came, he already knew everything and said,
Untie the handkerchief.
The golden hair streamed forth, and no excuse that the boy could offer was of any use.
You have failed the test, and you can stay here no longer. Go forth into the world. There you will learn what poverty is. But because you are not bad at heart, and because I mean well by you, I will grant you one thing. If you are ever in need, go to the forest and call out, Iron Hans, and then I will come and help you. My power is great, greater than you think, and I have gold and silver in abundance.
Then the king's son left the forest and walked on and on until at last he reached a great city. There he looked for work, but he was not able to find any because he had not learned a trade. Finally, he went to the castle and asked if they would take him in. The cook took him into service, saying that he could carry wood and water and rake up the ashes. Now once, when no one else was at hand, the cook ordered for him to carry the food to the royal table. Because he did not want his golden hair to be seen, he kept his cap on. And the king said, "When you come to the royal table, you must take your hat off." He answered,
I cannot. I have a scab on my head.
Then the king summoned the cook and scolded him. He was to send the boy away at once. However, the cook had pity on him and exchanged him with the gardener's boy. Now the boy had to plant and water the garden, hoe and dig and put up with wind and bad weather. Once in summer, when he was working alone in the garden, the day was so hot that he took off his hat. As the sun shone on his hair, it glistened and sparkled. The rays fell into the king's daughter's bedroom, and she jumped up to see what it was. She saw the boy and called out to him, "Boy, bring me a bouquet of flowers." He quickly put on his cap and picked some wildflowers. When he got into the room, the king's daughter said, "Take off your cap." He again responded,
I can't. I have a scabby head.
She, however, took hold of his cap and pulled it off. His golden hair rolled down onto his shoulders. He wanted to run away, but she held him by his arm and gave him a handful of ducats. He went away with them, but he did not care about the gold. He took the gold pieces to the gardener, saying,
These are for your children to play with.
The next day, the king's daughter called to him again, asking him to bring her a bouquet of wildflowers. When he went in with it, she grabbed at his cap and wanted to take it away from him, but he held it firmly with both hands. She again gave him a handful of ducats. He did not want to keep them, giving them instead to the gardener for his children. On the third day, it was no different. She was not able to take his cap away from him, and he did not want the gold. Not long afterwards, the country was overrun by war. The king gathered together his people, not knowing whether or not he could fight back against the enemy, who was more powerful and had a large army. Then said the gardener's boy,
I am grown up and I want to go to war. Just give me a horse.
The others laughed and said, After we have left, then look for one by yourself. We will leave one behind for you in the stable. Ah! After they left, he went into the stable and led the horse out. It had a lame foot and limped. Nevertheless, he mounted it and rode away. When he came to the edge of the forest, he called,
Iron Hans.
3 times so loudly that it sounded through the trees. The wild man appeared immediately and said,
What do you desire?
I need a strong horse for I going to war.
That you shall have, and even more than you are asking for.
Then the wild man went back into the forest, and before long, a stable boy came out of the forest leading a horse. Behind them followed a large army of warriors equipped with iron armor and with their swords flashing in the sun. The youth mounted the horse and rode at the head of the army. When he approached the battlefield, a large number of the king's men had already fallen, and before long, the others would have to retreat. Then the youth galloped up with his iron army and attacked the enemies like a storm, beating down all who opposed him. They tried to flee, but the youth was right behind them and did not stop until not a single man was left. Instead of returning to the king, he led his army back into the forest and then called,
Iron Hans.
What do you desire?
asked the wild man.
Take back your horse and your army and give me my three-legged horse.
It all happened as he requested, and he rode home on his three-legged horse. When the king returned to his castle, his daughter congratulated him for his victory. I am not the one who earned the victory, he said, but a foreign knight who came to my aid with his army. The daughter wanted to hear who the foreign knight was, but the king did not know. She asked the gardener where his boy was, but he laughed and said, he has just come home on his three-legged horse. The others have been making fun of him. But he said, I did the best of all, and without me it would have gone badly. And then they laughed at him all the more. The king said to his daughter, I will proclaim a great festival. It shall last for 3 days, and you shall throw a golden apple. Perhaps the unknown knight will come. When the festival was announced, the youth went again into the forest and called,
Iron Hans.
What do you desire?
He asked.
That I may catch the king's daughter's golden apple.
It is as good as done.
Said Iron Hans.
And further, you shall have a suit of red armor and ride on a chestnut horse.
When the day came, the youth galloped up, took his place among the knights, and was recognized by no one. The king's daughter came forward and threw a golden apple to the knights. He was the one who caught it, and as soon as he had it, he galloped away. On the second day, Iron Hans had outfitted him as a white knight and had given him a white horse. Again, he was the one who caught the apple. Without lingering an instant, he galloped away with it. The king grew angry and said, that is not allowed. He must appear before me and tell me his name. He gave the order that if the knight who caught the apple were to go away again, they should pursue him. On the third day, he received from Iron Hans a suit of black armor and a black horse. And he caught the apple again. When he was galloping away with it, the king's men pursued him. He escaped from them, but his horse jumped so violently that his helmet fell from his head, and they could see that he had golden hair. They rode back and reported everything to the king. The next day, the king's daughter asked the gardener about his boy. He is at work in the garden. The strange fellow has been at the festival too. He showed my children 3 golden apples that he has won. The king had him summoned, and he appeared again with his cap on his head. But the king's daughter went up to him and took it off. His golden hair fell down over his shoulders, and he was so handsome that everyone was amazed. Are you the knight who came to the festival every day, each time in a different color, and who caught the 3 golden apples? Asked the king. He answered,
Yes, and here are the apples.
Taking them out of his pocket and returning them to the king.
I am also the one who helped you to victory over your enemies.
If you can perform deeds like these, then you are not a gardener's boy. Tell me, who is your father?
My father is a mighty king, and gold I have of plenty.
I well see, said the king, that I owe you thanks. Can I do anything to please you? He answered,
Yes, give me your daughter as wife.
The maiden laughed and said, He does not care much for ceremony, but I already have seen from his golden hair that he is not a gardener's boy. And then she went and kissed him. His father and mother came to the wedding. And were in great delight. And as they were sitting at the wedding feast, the music suddenly stopped. The door opened, and a stately king came in with a great retinue. He walked up to the youth, embraced him, and said,
I am Iron Hans, and was by enchantment a wild man, but now you have set me free. All the treasures that I possess shall belong to you.
The end.